Welcome to The Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
All right, welcome back, investors. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Arn Sanadella. He's a real estate broker and investor with over 4 decades in the industry, starting in 1978. Arn built a thriving Silicon Valley residential brokerage business in Palo Alto and Menlo Park, California, while building a sizable portfolio of single-family rental properties in the Bay Area and across the U.S. In 2014, Arn moved over to Grenville, South Carolina to start a new life adventure where he continued to invest in small residential income properties in the Carolinas. In 2020, Arn successfully transitioned his single-family rental portfolio to multifamily investments and founded Spark Investment Group to help busy professionals and parents reap the benefits of commercial real estate investment without the hassle of operating the properties. Arn currently manages and operates with a multifamily portfolio as a general partner and sponsor of over 1,100 units with a total value in excess of $138 million. So with that, I would like to welcome Arn to the show. Welcome.
Hey, George, thanks for having me. Hopefully I can live up to the billing, but yeah, looking forward to having a nice chat about real estate and hopefully provide some value to your listeners on their investing, path and journey.
Well, absolutely. I know you're going to contact for several years and I've been following your career, a lot of value I know you're going to be sharing today. But the way I like to start is, so one of the things that I think is very important with underwriting is having the intuition, right? And intuition and numbers, in my opinion, are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I think intuition is what you get when you finally understand the numbers in an intimate way. All right, so you have a kind of a humorous way of expressing this. You say that you started investing before Excel was even invented. So how is that even possible? So tell us how did people do things? But I hope more importantly, tell us, how do you get a handle on whether a property makes sense without doing, 10 pages of underwriting?
Yeah, well, okay. So first, let me just show your listeners this. And sorry, my screen isn't very good, but that's the HP 12C, which I've had for 40 years. It's the best financial calculator ever built. So I say that half jokingly. But yes, I got in the real estate business in 1978. I think Microsoft Excel was developed 1987, 1988, if my memory serves me correct. Back then we do it on pen and paper, on APOD forms and the whole bit. So normally I use rules of thumb to kind of do an initial pass through on a property. So depending on the vintage, the size, the location, one can kind of estimate OpEx ratios. Knowing the market, one can kind of estimate market rents. And so you can go to market rents, do your rule of thumb OpEx ratio, get an NOI, and at least you can start to get a ballpark price. Is the $10 million the seller's asking anywhere close and worth a closer look, or is it so far off you can see off the bat it's a 3 cap rate and it's just not going to work? So you can do that kind of initial back of the napkin analysis, and for the first pass I think it's kind of sufficient. So that's kind of what I do. And then Dan Raleigh on my team has had a career as CFO, COO, very, very facile with budgeting, forecasting, and so forth. He's our chief analyst. And if something passes kind of my first looks test, we send it over to him and he really crunches the numbers. So he's the one who does the heavy lifting in terms of the analysis for us.
Love it. But even so, I see that everybody on the team should be an underwriter. That's something I believe very strongly. It sounds like that's something you would probably agree with.
Yes. And with us, basically we're a three-person team. We're pretty much all three have to be a unanimous yes to proceed. If one has hesitation, we usually pull the plug and don't proceed. Uh, Brian, my other partner, is very operationally focused. I'm kind of a little bit more big picture. Dan is really in the numbers, but Brian has this practical experience. Hey, what's it going to cost us to turn this unit, Brian? Is it $6,500 or is it $8,500? He knows the numbers because he's leading the crews. So he offers his input, and that certainly gets baked into the underwriting. And since he does most of the property management, his input on market rents and where we could take them generally carries the greatest weight within our team. So we each kind of contribute what we do best and then put it together, and hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah, and I love how you are ruling out a lot of deals early. To me, I call that the first rule of underwriting, which is triage, 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 always triage. You just simply don't have enough time to fully underwrite more than a very small number of deals. And so if you are not eliminating these things early on the basis of, say, cost per unit, or as you pointed out, cap rate. If the cap rate is crazy low, I'll just give you one example where that might make sense. Suppose because it's 50% occupied or something like that. Well, are you getting a great per unit discount, right? If you don't have, I would say some, and it's also about risk. Are you willing to take that sort of a risk? If you don't have those sort of rules in your head where you can say, this deal just doesn't make sense, cap rate's too low, there's no other compensating factor, we're done. We're going to move on to the next deal. Someone else will buy the deal and hopefully successfully. They may have a different risk appetite. They may be capitalized differently. They may have a different skill set. Just let it go to someone else and focus on what you're good at.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, here's another related question here. Uh, you know, cash flow is king. A lot of people would say. All right, I want to get your take on that. It sounds like you're a sort of an old school conservative investor. It's pretty much got a cash flow. You don't want to take too much risk. Am I going on a limb here?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So it is a big day, the debate, cash flow versus equity growth. And certainly, well, let me start by saying cash flow and value and equity growth and appreciation, they are all tied, right? If you increase the cash flow of the property, you're increasing the value of the property too, assuming the cap rate remains constant. I kind of take a longer term view. So I'm actually kind of more a total return investor than an immediate cash flow out of the gate investor. The property needs to cash flow. And where I see the cash flow come in is that provides a protective layer of income to pay debt service. So if you have a deal that's generating 3 or 4% cash on cash year 1 or 2, that 3 or 4% is enough to cover some issues, loss of rent, and unexpected repair, etc. So I like the cash flow as a protective layer. And I like the property. The way I describe it is I want the property to be self-supporting. So you acquire the property, you put a down payment in, you fund the CapEx, and all the capital goes in day one, and you don't have to add capital to the deal as you go. So it's self-supporting for day one. And if you create an investment that way, now time is on your side because the value will go up. So I kind of look more at total return. I think the other thing is, in my mind, and it's kind of coming back to this art and science question, there's a quantitative factor to investing, the numbers, but I also pay attention to the qualitative factor. Buildings have a certain level of quality. locations have a certain level of quality, and eventually that quality will come through in the income and the value of the property. So I try to pay attention to the quality of the location, the quality of the asset, because ultimately I think that will win the day for you. Sometimes some lower quality properties maybe look a little bit better on paper, but they don't perform as well, where the quality is generally gonna win out. So I'm actually not a cash flow is king investor. Cash flow is required, it's necessary, it makes the property self-supporting. But I think ultimately the goal of real estate investing is to grow one's net worth. And I would submit, when an investor, an individual, a family obtains a certain net worth, and that number could vary from family, individual, whatever, once they attain a certain net worth, they no longer worry about cash flow, because they can have as much cash flow as they want. They can have anything they want. Let me put it this way. Who's going to have more cash flow? Somebody who's got 2 million of investable cash, or somebody who's got 5 million of investable cash?
Right. Yeah, I
So
got a story about that if you don't
yeah, go
mind.
right ahead. Jump in. Yeah.
So I have a friend, he got an insurance company, started an insurance company. He grew it up to, I guess, I forget how many millions of dollars when he sold it. Okay. He invests all in early stage companies. And he says, George, I didn't feel rich until I had $5 million. It's like, yeah, because you didn't invest in anything that had cash flow. But when you get to a certain point, and I don't know what it is, maybe when you have $5 million, you can play Shark Tank all day long and you've always got an exit coming, and it's okay. So you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more. Cash flow, very important, not king. It's not the only thing. And so if you have some liquidity, depending on your net worth, depending on your liquidity, and depending on where you are in your career, maybe you've got a W-2 coming in and you plan to keep that for the next 10 to 15 years. Different decisions make sense. So definitely got to know your own situation and respond accordingly. Well, anyway, I think that that's probably enough depth. I want to make sure everybody just really gets to know you here at the end of the interview. So you really have, I think, had your dream career. You got to build your own brokerage, passive investing, active investing, everything else. But what I want to ask you is, what was your dream job as a kid? And only wrong answers accepted.
Well, it's wrong in the sense I didn't follow through on it. So as a kid, I loved math and science, and eventually I thought I was going to be either a research scientist or a professor. Went to Colgate University, got a BA in chemistry, then to the University of Michigan, thought I was going to get a PhD, and midway through decided, no, being in the bottom of a lab wasn't exactly what I wanted to do with my life. So I left academics and got into real estate. But as a kid, I thought my path was through academia and so forth.
Right. Well, speaking of somebody who did go that path, worked in several fields in biology, award-winning data scientist, is that most of us eventually figure out that's not the life for us. Some of us figured out sooner. So in many ways, I would say congratulations for getting the technical education, but then also figuring out that sometimes the grass actually is greener.
Yeah. And part of it was I wanted to return to the Bay Area where I grew up. I tend to be kind of a free spirit. So being entrepreneurial, being in the real estate market, either as a broker or an investor, I'm not good with chains of command and bureaucracy. So I had to find something that allowed me a certain level of freedom and autonomy. And of course, like with any decisions, there's pros and cons. So being an entrepreneur isn't necessarily always a bed of roses, but for me, it was the way to go.
Yeah, love it, love it. Just reminds me of one of my favorites, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, who says that some of the best entrepreneurs in the world are bad employees. They tend to be free spirits.
Yeah.
Favorite quote from John Davison Rockefeller. He said, I would rather be my own tyrant than to allow anyone else to tyrannize me. And I think that that's very true of the entrepreneurial spirit, which, of course, here at the Foundry, we're all about founders and business end of the business of real estate. So that's one that truly resonates with me. And I think with that, I think it's probably time to pivot to our rapid fire round. Arn, are you ready?
I hope so. Fire
All
away.
right.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate the modesty. I know you're ready. Let's do it. If you could be known for only one thing, Arn, what would it be?
I do what I say.
What's the greatest lesson in leadership you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Well, do as you say, do as one says, but also recognize the people who are part of the team and contribute to it. People work for money, but I find appreciation, true heartfelt appreciation of someone's efforts really motivates. So I think as a leader, you got to give respect and appreciation to people who are doing the hard work and making things happen.
Beautiful. What personal characteristic has been most pivotal to your success?
Yeah, good question. I would say there's a certain level of integrity, and it gets back to kind of, say what I mean and do what I say. So my word is my bond. I built my residential real estate career on people trusting me with a very big decision, buying and selling a house, a lot of money. And I think people understood that I did have their best interests in heart. What I would tell my clients is I may not always be right, and I do make mistakes, but whatever you hear come out of my mouth is what I honestly believe. So that's how I kind of approached it, and it served me well.
I love it. All right, now that's very deep. Now it's time to switch it up a little bit. I got some random question cards,
Oh,
and some of these
no.
are really zany. Okay, so
Okay.
it's not my fault. I didn't write these questions. Just tell me when to
All
stop
right.
cutting the deck.
Stop.
All right, top card. Where would you choose to live if you had to leave this country?
I would probably go to Italy, where my family is from. It's a beautiful country, great food, great history. So I'd probably go to Italy, where my grandparents came from.
All right, I love it, and great choice. Great food, great music, great culture. Yeah, obviously learned a lot about civilization from the Romans. Anyway, that's just my historical impression. I history buff here. All right, can you give us a tip or trick that investors can implement in their business today?
Always be talking to people about what you're doing and let them know you're out there in the market. Let them know what you're interested in, because you never know where that can lead. I'm sure we both have had deals just based on some off chance conversation that somebody knows somebody that's selling a building or buying a building. So don't be pushy, but share what you're doing in the investment world, send it out there in the universe, and it tends to come back to you.
Yeah, beautiful. The time it takes to make a new connection might be moments, but the potential value is infinite. Can you give us a book that's helped to forge you as a leader, entrepreneur, or investor, and tell us why?
One that I've read recently is My Plan to Live to 156 Years Old by Dan Sullivan. He's the same guy who wrote the book Who Not How.
Mhm.
And the fascinating thing about the book is once you start to think about that your life doesn't have any end date, it just opens up so many more possibilities in the present. So I found it fascinating. I found it motivating. For me, I turned 70 in about 2 weeks here, and I'm still excited about the future. There's a lot I want to do. Fortunately, I've got good health. So, want to make the remaining years, whatever it is, the best I've ever had.
Love it. And I see out on social media, you got your bike going. So I know you're
Yes.
really living the life, and that's good. Yeah. So keep being an inspiration. Can you send us out with a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs?
That's a tough one. What would I say? Hmm, I don't know. I'm drawing a blank, George. Sorry.
Oh, shoot. Okay. No favorite quotes for
Yeah,
us. All right.
would
We
you
can.
ever? Yeah, no, I don't know that I do.
Okay.
I would say be in the present. To the degree you're in the present, you're going to be more effective. You'll be happier. So stay in the present moment is what I would advise.
Wonderful. And I gotta say, just like the greatest movies, some of the coolest scenes end up on the cutting room floor. We didn't even have an opportunity to start talking about build to rent. I know you've got a lot of great things to say about that, and you have your own ways of keeping yourself safe in what could otherwise be a very tumultuous and volatile place to be in the market. But who knows? Maybe we'll have a round two. In any event, it looks like we're the time for wrap. So just want to ask, make sure everybody's able to reach out to you. Email, website, carrier pigeon, smoke signals. What's the best way to reach out to Arns and Ella?
Well, George, I've enjoyed our conversation. And yes, when you have time, let's do it again. The name of my company is Spark Investment Group. Website is investwithspark.com. I'm very active on either Facebook or LinkedIn under Arns Cinadella or Spark Investment Group. Always happy to talk real estate.
All right, beautiful. And thank you so much for the value add today. You just got a ton of experience, and I love the way you expressed all the things that people need to know about the art and science of underwriting, about really how to stay safe out there. We can say that that's particularly important in today's tumultuous times. But again, I guarantee, ladies and gentlemen, it's coming back again. So listen to this interview in 10 years, and it's going to be just as relevant. So thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience, Art.
Hey, thanks so much, George. It's a pleasure.